All right, so let's start. I just have a few opening remarks and then we'll get you onto the main feature. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Angie. I'm here with Clara from New Ventures and of course our speaker, Matt from Backstretch Recruitment. So this is the topic around HR 101 and we try to focus. HR can be very broad and of course it really varies depending on your size of company, but we really tried to, Matt has done a great job distilling it down to focusing more particularly on the kind of the startup interests. So first, want to acknowledge that the New Ventures BC offices are situated on the traditional ancestral unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And we are very privileged to be here. And our sponsors, of course. So again, New Ventures BC is a nonprofit organization, and we definitely are here because of the community and, of course, our sponsors. So our lead sponsor is Innovate BC. Our gold sponsors are EY, National Bank, and Fasken. Silver sponsors are Vantech Angel Network, SFU Beauty School, RBCX, Talk Shop Media, Razor CFO, they just joined this morning, actually, and UBC Sauder School of Business. And we've got lots of great service providers as our proud sponsors, including our speaker today, which is Backstretch Recruitment Group. And our media sponsors. Okay, and before we get into today's event, I just want to tell you about some upcoming events as well. So we still have lots happening throughout the rest of the month. So next week we are with RBCX, and we did a pitch talk last week around storytelling focus. So this talk coming up next week is more around fundraising and what investors are looking for. So definitely join us online for that one. Leith usually has got good up-to-date stats in terms of what investors are doing as well. Also, if you are looking to do any hiring, you have the option of info session on the MyTex program and how you can utilize that program to hire talent. That's coming up as well. Just a partner event of ours that I work with, the Vancouver Entrepreneurs Forum. They have an event at the end of June, which is around the future of transportation. And part of that is a pitch competition. So if you are in any type of transportation related field, they are looking for really interesting startups to attend their pitch conversation or their pitch event. And it's a big event hosted with TransLink, Invest Vancouver, and a few other organizations. So it's a good opportunity for exposure if that's your field. And a little sneak peek, because we haven't actually published this yet, but we are partnering with Innovate BC, the province of BC, for a half-day conference on intellectual property, particularly around how you use it for business growth. So we're going to have a lot of case studies on founders and IP, and a lot of very, I'd say, deeper dive conversations around IP. So it's kind of assuming you have the IP 101 down. So it'll be June 25th for the afternoon, and there'll be 4 or 5 different sessions plus networking. So we'll be sharing details for this program or this event later this week, but just wanted to flag it with you in case that's of interest. And if it is, feel free to let us know and we can make sure you get the registration link. But back to today. So today the topic is around HR. So Matt Heiydt is with us from Backstretch Recruitment Group. So I will say I'll just kind of do my little preamble while I switch slide decks here. But Matt and Backstretch came on as a sponsor a couple of years ago, and it's kind of one of my more favorite ways of a sponsor coming on board, and that's because Backstretch worked with a past New Ventures competitor, and I think was impressed by the actual competitor, so said, hey, how do I learn more about this competition? How do I get involved and help more people? So that was kind of how we met, and we've kind of worked together ever since. And I would say Backstretch themselves is a pretty unique model in terms of how they do recruitment. So I'm sure Matt will share a little bit about that, but I think I've always valued having the expertise of Backstretch here. So I'm going to stop attempting to multitask because I apparently can't. And I'm going to pull up the presentation and I will let Matt introduce himself while I get the slides up. So Matt, over to you.
Nice. Hey all, thanks for joining. Angie, thanks for hosting. And close to my heart is companies in that sort of C to Series B stage. Little bit of super top level is we were actually chatting about golf because I pursued professional golf before I got into recruiting 21 years ago. And I spent 6 years in a big agency. I saw what was broken there. I spent 2 years managing recruiting inside of a tech company where we went from 5 to 200. I saw what was broken there. And then that's why I started this company called Backstretch, which is really to help solve hiring for companies and deal with the main causes that are broken in traditional ways companies hire. So we're going to talk a lot about what I've seen in the last 21 years and hopefully help you as growth companies and startups and kind of figure out what's going to work for you. And I'm really hoping to turn this into a Q&A. So if anybody has questions, I guess throw them into the chat. I prefer that a lot more than just talking at you. So yeah, further ado, you can. So Angie's going to control the slides. So you're going to hear me say things like next, which is next, please. This is kind of what that was is over the years have worked with over 200 companies now to date in terms of helping them set up their hiring strategies and execution of that. One of the things that Angie mentioned is there's a really cool company called Certain. Backstretch is a company that did all the hiring for that business through to Series B. So Backstretch did 194 hires for Certain in 19 months. We had every single hire for that company during that moment. So there's a lot to talk about there, I think, that everyone can learn from. And again, they were with New Ventures. My team has 50 plus years dedicated to the whole hiring space. So we'll chat about that. Next, please. Okay, so I asked around just to regular people about what the heck is the biggest challenges in HR. And this is how I sort of framed this for New Ventures. This is the question, the things that kept coming back. For people who are in startups and have kind of gone to that next stage, they said, hey, the stuff that you need to know at the beginning is important. They said, don't forget about you're building a culture, and we'll talk about that. And the third is, how the heck do you take on hiring and ramping up? And the fourth is, hey, just acknowledge you're not reinventing a wheel. Follow those who have failed and learn from that, so you don't have to bring that into your business. But that's actually one of the hopefully the biggest takeaways for me during this. Next, please. So ChatGPT is hot. So I used it for stuff like this, and I was curious if I type in HR challenges for startups in ChatGPT, what do you get? And this is interesting because there's similar connections to what people were saying. So this is what ChatGPT believes is the top HR challenges for startups: attracting and retaining talent, building a culture, managing growth, adapting to a remote work environment, and compliance with employment laws. So all these things will kind of be hidden this for you. Next, please. So here's the agenda. We're going to start at the beginning, just talk about what it takes to actually get set up. We're going to spend the next section on actually what the heck is this whole culture, overused word, but it is important. Third is talking about what it means to attract and to secure talent, what that looks like. And then a fourth is this whole idea of learning from past failures through others. And we're going to talk about what we learned working with Certain at that stage. Next. Okay, so yeah, what do you need to know? Next one, please. Okay, so these are the things that are administratively required for you starting your business, especially if you're looking to set yourself up and bring on people. There's things listed here: CRA, payroll numbers, payroll processing, I wrote hire an accountant, WorkSafe BC and BC Health Tax, otherwise known as used to be MSP. If we just go to the next slide, I'll just tell you what I think you should do is get a payroll provider, get an accountant, enjoy your life. So, when you're growing your startup, and when I see other companies growing your businesses, you focusing on revenue generating activity is where you need to be. And you can get bogged down by these kind of things. So my life changed in a very great way when we actually brought on somebody to head up our finance, and I never had to worry about it again. And my life enjoyment went up like 20% when I'm working. Trying to navigate payroll, trying to navigate benefits, all that stuff was just a huge headache for me. It's things I wasn't great at either. So I always felt like I was letting down the team. And I would say is accountants love this. This is their competencies. So all the stuff that was listed on the previous slide, They do it daily. They know what they're doing. And that's getting set up isn't hard. It's just time consuming. So get an accountant, get a payroll provider, enjoy your life. Next slide. Okay, so this is one of the things that kept on hearing when I was talking to people that have gone past that sort of startup stage. And I was saying, hey, what are your, when you were starting, what's your biggest HR issues? This word kept coming out, even though the word is overused, right? But it's like, what the heck is it? So next slide, please. I just want to talk to you about what my perspective is, working with over 200 companies from the inside and kind of seeing what people think on the external side, whether it's candidates or whether it's people that are looking to invest in them. And you can replace the word culture. You can use any words you want, but you're building something. And I just want to talk about that from an HR kind of hiring perspective. So what I wrote here is, why is this important now? We'll talk a little about what I've seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And also for you starting, maybe some people in the room are just getting going with one person. Maybe you're kind of just pre-revenue, maybe you're post-revenue, but it's just a big one. So here's some stats. 80% of millennial job seekers do judge culture before they accept a position. So you can get people through your pipeline, but before millennials will accept a position joining your place you're building, they will check in with themselves and their family to actually talk about if it's a match culturally. 89% of passive job seekers will evaluate your brand before replying to a message. So there's a lot of research being done beforehand on, they may not use the word culture, but it's about, what is this place? Is this aligning? And we'll talk about how to organize that. And the last one is 32% morale drop when a bad hire does happen that does not match your culture. Can happen in your organization too. And we see this a lot with startups. You got introduced to a person, you hire them. I talked to a really interesting business that had two very senior hires, and they both had to get let go because they took some shortcuts around hiring. And their morale drop is huge right now, and they're really challenged and struggling. This is why we're talking with them, to make sure those first hires are done right. Next slide, please. Okay, so ChatGPT says this is how they define it. I think it's kind of cool. Company culture refers to the shared values, beliefs, behaviors, and practices that shape the overall character and personality of a company. It encompasses the company's vision, mission, goals, and the way it conducts business. A company's culture is reflected in how its employees interact with each other, with customers, with the external stakeholders, and the norms, attitudes, and traditions that guide their behavior. A strong and positive company culture can lead to increased employee engagement, productivity, and retention, while a negative can result in high turnover, low morale, and decreased performance. Yeah, well, duh, that makes sense. Interesting perspective, though. I do like some things here about what it leads to. And productivity, retention, and I would actually say revenue is really important in today's market. And if you're building a bad one, or ones that people don't want to invest in or join, it's such an uphill battle. So that's why I think people said this is important to talk about at the beginning, not later. You're building it right from the beginning. Next, please. Okay, so here's my thoughts on this whole culture space. When you are building your leadership team, your founding team, have dialogue early and often about what and why you're building. And when you're sharing that information, whether it's through social, whether it's through a pitch deck, whether it's through job marketing, whether it's through reach out campaigns for candidates, people hear that. They hear the why. They align with the why, or they self-select themselves out of the why. And it's really good to keep talking about that internally. And by the way, it can totally change. Which is the second point, is that it many times shifts into something totally different than what you were expecting to, and that's okay too. But if people can understand the why from the outside, the culture is going to be starting to build nicely. What that means is that in recruiting, we talk about this a lot, is we want to give people the chance to self-select themselves out. So if you're really genuine at the beginning and saying, this is what we do and this is why we do it, and this is why people love working here, people can get aligned with that, or get out quickly. Like we have one customer right now where I can talk to the team. About 90% of the people self-select themselves out of this company at the beginning. And I was like, oh, that's a lot. But the team was interesting. They said, actually, that's great because they're really clear on who they are. They're clear on what they're building. And they're so clear on it that people can decide at the very beginning stages if this is something that they really want to get into or not, which is truly genuine to them. And that is from the owner and that's from the founder and that goes all the way through down. So it's actually quite nice that they are so clear on what they want. And let's talk a little bit about Certain, because we worked with them for just pretty much 3 years, and we got them to just about the 300 mark in total. And I want to share a little bit of what I saw in culture there. Next slide, please. At the beginning, Certain was really awesome because this is actually kind of what created the founding team. And they were really clear from their previous experiences. They just no a-holes, right? And it's funny because it kind of started as a joke for them, but what Certain builds and what their software product, what the value is there, which got them to 30 million sales, is not connected to necessarily the culture, meaning that the people who are on the outside who are signing up for this, they might get a little feel about it, but internally, they were so clear from the beginning that we want to work with great people. And that was so important to them, which was great for us because we always could really be clean and clear in terms of helping them hire that 194 in 19 months. So what I mean by that, genuine and authentic to what you're building, people see through what you say when you say things like, use buzzwords or say things like, like, I don't want to get into using the word family. It's like my biggest pet peeve. But, we're a family. Like all of these things are not genuine and they're not authentic, meaning that when people read those, they're not really learning what you're really building and who you are. So that is super important to share at the beginning. And that will manifest itself through the organization because people need to self-select themselves in and out of this. Why the no a-holes was kind of cool is it also turned into a marketing and talking point. So we would have candidates at the beginning to say, oh, we went to the culture page on the website before we talked to them and said, oh, I love the #1 rule with no a-holes. I'm like, that's where I want to be. Like, so people weren't necessarily, enthralled or excited about the actual product they're building. It's a very important product. It's done very well, but they were really interested in what type of vibe they're creating, which is what allowed us to get the right people through the door quickly. And that was really, really fun. They also made hoodies that they would wear at career fairs that just said that across on it. And everyone was like, what the heck's that? And then you have a little Certain logo on the side, kind of like the hoodie I'm wearing today. And it was like, that was awesome. So this is another reason why a truly genuine and authentic culture can just hit home because people notice, they get excited, and it creates a buzz about what you're building too. And there's no buzzwords, which is nice. Next. So it evolved over 3 years, okay? But what I liked about it is they kept growing and changing it, but it kept on still reflecting what this all started at in the first place about working with awesome people. So then I went to this. It certainly have 4 core values. We're accountable, we're inclusive, we're synergistic, and importantly, we're not assholes. That last part might sound a little controversial, but there is a reason. We do not accept belittling, mocking, refusing to assist others, spreading gossip, undermining, and taking credit for work when they didn't do it and blaming others for their mistakes. Why is this nice? This was after maybe 150 hires or so where the team got together and wanted to further this. And this was what we would use in our marketing for them when we were trying to grow their teams in different areas. And again, it allowed people to know right from the beginning what this place is about, and people would either self-select themselves in or out quickly because they were so clear on what they're building in terms of that cultural vibe. Next, please. So my takeaway for everyone in the room today is, I really would say is stop pretending to be something you're not. If you're small, you're small. If you're pre-revenue, you're pre-revenue. Tell people where you're at and be genuine about it. People will dig that. Next is tap into what brings you and your partners together. So we had a really interesting company in the hydrogen fuel cell space. And you could tell there was people there that just loved cars. And they got together on the weekends and would do car stuff. And that idea manifested itself into what they were actually starting to do more and more as a business. And I think that's something to be aware of in your organization. Again, certain culture they built was not product focused. It was who they want to work with. And the same thing will go for you. Making it something that allows others to self-select or deselect themselves, as I mentioned, is they should have a really good, genuine, authentic idea of who the heck you are before we chat with them in hiring. That should come from what you're sharing to the world and at the basics of what's on your website. And even if you only have a landing page, my pushback is always make it genuine, make it real, make it who you really are, because people want to see that. And that's what people want to know if they're going to dedicate their lives to joining you in any capacity, or invest. Next. Oh, go back one, please, Angie. I forgot. Here's my last thing is, after doing this for a long time, I don't hire a full-time HR person until you have to. It changes culture overnight. And I had a conversation, like I shared earlier, about a really cool company that raised a good chunk of money. They hired HR too early, and they had problems from the immediate. And the reason why is because I know we're talking about HR, and you may think I'm in HR, but you as a founder are the one driving the culture, and you should be driving it as far as you can and having your inputs on it. And if you're going to hire an HR, I would say is call us before you do, and we'll tell you about how to set that up properly. So you're not having, sometimes people say in startup world that HR can be culture guardians. That's a word that gets used a lot. And I definitely hear that and resonate that. And I've seen that happen too often. So, reach out after if you're thinking about hiring HR. My recommendation is typically for most startup software businesses or just startups as a whole, kind of around 40 to 50. When you hit that 40 mark, maybe 50 mark, it's time to start thinking about that. And the really great ones I've seen hold off until around 50 headcounts. Next, please. Okay, so attracting and securing talent came up in both people we chatted with as well as what ChatGPT said. So let's talk about that. You may not be there right now, but again, because you're setting up culture or that vibe, it is important to tap into that now, and it's going to manifest itself at this stage when you're growing. And some of you may be hiring today, so I'll chat with you on that. Next, please. Okay, so first thing is if you are in the world of growing your business, let's just talk openly about the options you have, the good and the bad of each. And I'll share with you when I've seen these companies try to grow, what they have done well and where they've been kind of blindsided. I will say hiring is really interesting because everyone thinks they can do it, but very few people get it right. And another person who was the first HR person at LinkedIn, who I worked with a bit while we were doing the work with Certain, he said the funniest thing about hiring. He said, well, with hiring, you're either going to pay now or you're going to pay later. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So this is an idea to tap into the options you have and really talk openly about the good and the bad of each. So you can kind of factor in which one's good for you, depending on how you want to roll. So first one is you as a team get to decide if you want to go contract or permanent. So I thought it'd be good to talk about the pros and cons. The next one is times involved. I think it's really important. A lot of people don't know this or think about this. The average time to hire is 41 business days, and this is through LinkedIn. And then the person is typically giving notice. So let's just say the minimum is 2 weeks. So you're looking at 51 days before anybody can join your business. That's the average. So if it's a harder to fill position, like a software engineering or something of that level, I listed this for you as, this is new ventures. It takes 49 days to close in software engineering in today's market. So you're talking at 10 days, 59. So it is important to think about this, that if you need to move quickly, you got to invest time into this. And this is a value of contracting versus permanent, but it's also a con, which we'll kind of share. I also wanted to say it's really important to think about whichever path you go, and I'm big on this, this is where I've landed 21 years into this, is it's all about the user experience. And no matter what path you go, you have to create a great experience, because these people that you're chatting with and declining or not getting back to you will remember. Glassdoor is your worst enemy or your best friend, especially when you're growing. And just here's a couple of stats: is 49% of respondents decline an offer because of a poor recruiting experience. Super interesting. And 80% we shared kind of earlier is fit with this, is 80% of millennial job seekers do think about a good fit for the company culture before accepting a position. And I wanted to highlight this again because that's 8 out of 10. And if you're not clear and genuine about what you're actually building and why, then you're going to lose a lot of awesome people. And that's why we want to talk about the culture first, then this. Next, please. Okay, so if you're starting your business, let's talk about it. We do both contractors for our customers as well as permanent. So we're pretty unbiased, but I've seen both and I've seen good and bad. Here's the pros for contractor if you're sitting around and wondering about it. Thanks for the questions. Awesome. I love questions. We'll deal with those very shortly. Flexibility with contractors is great. You can solve problems quickly, bandwidth, and you can go up and down as needed. And people who are accepting contractors lives a contracting lifestyle many times, especially in software, especially in tech. Cost saving is you can typically save 30% per person, and it can go up when you're looking at overseas options, meaning per hour rates. It's a reduced risk as well from legal perspectives. What I mean by that is a lot of companies in your world, when you're growing, will use my company to be the payroll provider. So you don't have to worry about payroll. You don't have to worry about legal issues. If you're hiring a contractor, you can actually call us up. Even if you have your own contractor, we can payroll them and we can cover all the legal responsibilities. And that's a great way to roll. Also, if you needed us to find a contractor, we can happily do that as well. And we can put them on our payroll. So you can work with them as long as required. It can have a beginning and end date, and you're not taking any legal accountability or responsibility through this. So a lot of people like that in contractors' life when they're growing, right? Hey, we need somebody for 3 months. Go get them, put them on your payroll. They're under Backstretch's banner. We do all the timesheets. We do all the payroll, all good. The cons I've seen is there is definitely a lack of control. You're limited on impact of both quality of work and their commitment to finish the contract. It has happened a lot of the times where people just don't finish the contract. So know that coming into it, and also check in if the person was really looking for permanent in the first place, because if they were, you probably would have a really high chance of losing them. Limited investment. It's difficult to gain levels of commitment from them, right? If you're trying to build something and you're trying to have an awesome surrounding team, what you give is what you get. So this is the minimum accountability you can put on yourself. So that's probably what you're going to get back. Accountability, as many contractors have multiple distractions, very challenging to create accountability. When I first started growing Backstretch, I tried the contracting route, and my personal experience was frustrating and failure. And then I decided to go permanent, which as a business owner was taking off a more expense, but that's where we are today. And it's really cool to build with other people. So that's just a personal experience. I'm not saying it's right for you. Next, please. Okay, so why go permanent? So pros for you is seeing the over 200 companies is commitment goes both ways, and commitment to join the team goes a long way. When you say to them, hey, I like you, we're going steady now. People are into that. And there's a little bit of deeper commitment typically. Quality is a lot. It depends. Okay, so when I put quality here, it can be higher. I will say in your space, in the tech space, or anything to do with software or tech, there are excellent senior contractors out there. So if you're paying for a mid to senior contractor, the quality is actually very high and sometimes higher than permanent. So you can actually hire people that are quite senior. Collaboration, why is it a pro? Working and building common goals, positive momentum, solving issues, good vibes. If you're the founder, you feel like you're building a team versus having to continually be stressed about what you have to tell people to do. Here's the cons we've seen. It can be 1.5 to 2 times more expensive when considering all the costs. We're not just talking salary. We're talking that you're doing paid, if you got benefits, we got health spending accounts, we got paid vacations. There's a lot of costs involved. So it's a tough pill to swallow, and maybe you do it. Discipline is in cons. It can be a little bit challenging because in contractors, it has a beginning and an end date, while permanent is longer. So it's harder to deal with discipline typically because you can't just end the contract. However, that's just like the commitment size. So it's got good and bad. And if it's not working out, it can be difficult ending agreements like we've probably all heard about or seen. However, I would say is very rarely do I see anything go bad if both sides are pretty human when it comes to that stage. And if it's transparent, it's I've seen very rarely something not work out, even if things are ending. So I would make that a huge stress if I was thinking about perm. Next, please. Okay, so we talked about time. So I just want everyone to really think about this, because if you are starting a business, you better know what it means to actually put time into actually doing the hiring side of it. Because people just think it's you're running on the side of your desk and it's just like, oh yeah, we'll just do this over here. And we get calls. This is how a lot of our businesses start is founders start. They hire one or two persons, maybe, and then there's more to do. And we get a call saying, we've got X amount to do. We just got a bad review on Glassdoor. I'm trying to do it when I'm at night. It is a terrible way to build a team. It's like you are the coach and you're building a sports team. And it's a really important job because you're going to spend more time with these people than you will your partners and your children, especially when you're building your business. So don't settle. That's my point. So just opening up time, because everyone thinks it's, it's a little bit here and there. I want you to get a really good clarity in terms of what it means. I'm not saying you're going to do 194 in 19 months, but we did that for certain. So I had the numbers. So I pulled it together. 607 hours dedicated for both my team as well as individuals in certain. 776 first interviews at 20 minutes each. 465 second interviews. Candidate pipeline. Not applying to positions, but actually headhunting, building pipelines, and sending direct messages to people who are not applying. We did over 3,000 messages outward bound, meaning finding candidates, seeing their backgrounds and profiles, and message them directly to build a proper pipeline versus just posting something and seeing what comes in. It's a really bad way to run in recruiting when you're just relying on people who are applying, because only 3% of the market's going to be applying typically. So even if there's great candidates out there who may be looking, you cannot get the market or the top candidates by doing that. You need to build pipelines of talent and keep them coming. Roughly 70% of our hires, so it says roughly 70% of these are found through Backstretch direct reach out messaging. What I meant by that is certain numbers were 70% hired through us doing reach out campaigns and finding candidates, and 30% were actually found through actually just applying through job ads, meaning that the quality of the reach outs was significantly higher than those who found a job and were applying. Most people are working, most people will not see the job ad, and that's just how she goes. Next, please. So think about the impact when you're building your place. Companies are losing an average of 15K when they do a bad hire. We talked about this earlier. Morale can drop by 32% when a bad hire is completed. And bad hires can result in 36% drop in productivity, meaning it is not a place to settle. And it's not a place to try to run on the side of your desk. In fact, it's probably should be your highest priority when you decide to take this level. Because if you keep getting A players who are building and growing with you from that good to great philosophy, it's a great vibe. Next, please. Okay, so one of the other points is the experience you're creating. I told you after doing this for a long time, I believe the experience you're creating is more valuable than almost anything, because the best marketing you will have in your startup is actually the employment experience, reaching out to people directly and sharing your stories. You can find this by directly messaging them. We did 76 hires for a hydrogen fuel cell tech company, and I sat down with the HR director after, and I said, okay, awesome run. This was amazing. But I asked her, what is your number one takeaway from working with us. And she kind of surprised me, and she says, it's funny enough, you you were our best marketing department. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, we have a marketing department, but they're posting on social or LinkedIn, but you are actually reaching out to individuals in our industry and you're sharing our story. And we were headhunting in Germany, Italy, UK, United States, and Canada for them. So we found this senior fuel cell stack designer in Germany working at Mercedes-Benz. We messaged him directly and shared that company's story. And that person was like, oh, I've never heard of these people. That's cool. I didn't even know Canada is involved in this game. So that's what experience does for you in this space. It's just such an awesome way to build your brand and not get lost in the clutter of you posting somewhere thinking people are going to see it in your industry. So employment branding is a big one. So you may not be here yet, but you will. So I just wanted to hear, this is why 89% of passive candidates evaluate your brand before applying. So if they're even if they got a message from us or they saw a posting or something through the network, 9 out of 10 are going to go do a little bit of a deep dive. And how long are they going to do a deep dive? The average candidate spends 41 minutes. So if you think people are just clicking on apply, that is not true. They care where they work. They're going to be very decisive in terms of where they apply, and you're going to lose a lot of people through that process. Some do an hour, some do 20 minutes. That's the average is 41. The better candidates, in my opinion, spend a longer time on it. And we talked about this too, 80% of millennial job seekers. How does it connect to the first comment? Well, creating a consistent and world-class experience for current and future candidates is important. Think about the certain experience, think about the no a-holes, think about why they wrote the further stuff. The entire hiring process is super important. First point of contact to offer acceptance, and how are you rejecting people, and how are you sharing things through this process? If it's on one person's shoulders, things get dropped. That candidate can go on Glassdoor and drop you a 2 out of 5. And now everyone who's spending 41 minutes researching your company sees that over anything on your website, and it just turns into a real bad experience. And that's what we're trying. That's what I want to pass along today is you can't allow that to happen at the beginning. And that's a huge one. Next, please. So Glassdoor is important. Gotta make that change. So if you don't know Glassdoor is the #1 site for people to look at it and make decisions. So they're going to go to your website, they're going to go to your LinkedIn. The third stop will be Glassdoor. That's because that's what Google shows. So Glassdoor is where they will make decisions on your business before you talk to them, before they really have any clarity. Why people like Glassdoor is there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information, and people don't have to put their information, so it's anonymous. Yeah, there's a couple of bad reviews on there that are probably not true. Everyone knows that. However, the majority of people on Glassdoor are sharing relevant information based on your business. You can talk about the interview process. You can talk about the interview experience. You can talk about what it's like to work there. You can talk about, they do boss reviews on Glassdoor, which is really cool. So you can go, if you're managing a lot of people right now, you can go on there and see what their people are saying about you. And this is what they see before they talk to you, meaning they're going to get themselves, they're not going to talk to you. And again, look at this, 60 million people, that's how many users per month. And also 84% of job seekers will say company reputation influences their choice. And then we know millennials are doing 89% in terms of culture fit. So it all adds up to the same thing. There's this void of time that you don't get access to, but they will do that and they will control that. And you got to make your best foot forward on that. Next, please. So if I was you, if I'm starting a business, this is what I would do. Because we know that people are going to spend 41 minutes of research, and investors will do this as well as people that want to work with you or join you. First off is usually LinkedIn. So have an awesome company profile. It's genuine, authentic. Executive profile is everyone in your business. Matching pictures, matches backgrounds. If you have a company, like I've seen this in startups where like there's different styles of pictures and there's different backgrounds, it just showcases you're not taking this seriously, because LinkedIn is where everyone's going. So pull it together. It takes 2 seconds to find a good desktop background that you can add and get everyone to do it. Classy. Next stop is definitely go by Glassdoor today or after this and see what's going on. Maybe you're not even on there yet. Totally cool. Maybe you are and there's stuff on there, good, bad, and ugly. You can respond there, you can face it. It's just an important thing to do if you're growing, because that is going to be people's second stop. And then the third stop typically is your website. Does it line up with LinkedIn? Is it genuine and authentic to what you're actually trying to build, not just product wise? And they will click on careers page typically if someone's considered joining you. So that should also have a similar vibe to what that is consistent through this story. That's a little bit of a brand audit you can do as your little homework. Next. Okay, last one is don't reinvent the wheel. Angie, I think are we on till 2 or 2:15?
We have until 2:15.
Okay, cool. Just trying to figure out timing for everybody. Okay, so here's the biggest takeaway I just wanted to share is hopefully the first stuff kind of hit, but I just wanted to say is surround yourself with people who have failed a lot and hopefully have some wins, because it's frustrating for us because we help startup companies grow and hire for a living. And we face this a lot when people are approaching us. It's ego. It's ego that I know better. And when I do see that ego and I know better already, even though I haven't failed or won, we don't want to work with you. It's just bad news because we bring expertise, we bring commitment, and we love our craft. So let's talk about some failures and wins that I've seen working with 200 companies, and we'll pass it along. So learning, let's talk about learning from those who succeed. Okay, so I was lucky enough to meet Andrew, awesome dude. This is from our website. So let's talk about here's my perspective of what I saw Certain do really great at. A little backdrop on Certain. Again, they were with New Ventures finalists in 2017. They are now ranked second fastest growth company in Canada through Deloitte. And in 2017 to 2022, they went from 56,000 revenue to 30 million in 2022. So, and now they're over 400. So this is an interesting company to learn from. And because we did 194 hires for this place, we were right in there with them. So next, please. So here's my takeaways is what I saw Certain do really well. They cared a lot about their partners, who they worked with, and they would take great pride in helping and working with people they knew they were going to excel their business versus having this ego of, well, we could do it, but we don't have the time. Like when you say that, it's frustrating to hear as an external partner, right? Or, oh, we could do it, but I'm busy. There's people out there that have dedicated their lives to certain crafts or certain disciplines, and to lead into those is pretty cool. My other lesson is it starts at the top, and then the third lesson is the clarity on your why. So we'll talk about that next. Okay, so it's not just about HR. I know this is an HR thing, but I just wanted to really ask all your startups and all the people that are out there in the world is who the heck are your strategic partners? There's people that can run faster, that have failed way more than you have or ever will, and that people you can chat with to help you escalate your world quicker and better. The cool thing about partners is if you think you can do it yourself or with your internal team, everyone's trying to figure it out as they go. And even if they don't have or have a little competency in there, there's people out there that you might actually really enjoy chatting with who have extreme confidence in that space and failed many a times. So it's good to have chats early and often with people in the external world. It doesn't necessarily need to work with them, but just pick their brains, see what they've done. Just remember on hiring alone, if you're thinking about time, if you're trying to throw this all on top of your shoulders or your team's shoulders, just hiring alone for this ramp up we talked about with 607 hours, a whole bunch of first interviews in seconds. These are things you cannot do at the side of your desk. And in my opinion, the coolest thing about partners, it's kind of like hiring a contractor. It's a tight leash. So if they're a great partner, you'll be with them to the end. And if you don't like the way it's going, then you don't have any commitments to keep it going because you're the one paying the bills. So I think that's a really good space to be in. You're getting extreme competency. You're getting people that can help you escalate quicker than you ever could. And if you don't like the style of relationship, you can wrap it up at any time. Next. Okay, so the second thing I wanted to say is it does start at the top. This is one thing that I really respected about working with Certain. When we first worked with them, they were their own HR and they had 5 different recruiting firms trying to help. internal HR was assisting in some recruiting. It was broken before we even got in working with them. Then there was a trigger. They raised $42 million. So we came in there. They did interviews of partners they could work with. They had lots of meaningful chats with them, just like we talked about the first slide. And then we designed the right structure with them. So we worked through agreements, we talked to the teams, and we signed and sealed it. And I'll never forget it because we signed and sealed on my birthday at 11 p.m. at night. And that's what the beauty is when you're working with partners on the outside. But I also wanted to say, why does it start at the top? Because buy-in from the top is the beacon for the whole place. If someone at the top says, oh, they're not that great, or, we should do this anyways, the beacon spreads across the organization like wildfire. And what I loved about Certain, and this is what my whole team, why they loved working with Certain over 3 years, they knew that the leadership at Certain had our backs. And you don't understand how important that is. Like, that is the biggest takeaway, is find your partners, align deeply with them, get rid of them if it's not working, but build confidence to your teams or your people, or even just you, and set that off for success. Because if both sides are working together and you're working closely with your partners, it's such an awesome vibe. And it makes us wake up in the morning on our side, have a coffee, and make you number one. And that's how we did 194 hires. Next, please. Okay, this is the last one, I think. Learning from those who succeed. It connects it all. Clarity on the why. Trusting your partner's leadership from the top works, yet culture clarity or your why is key to growth. Like I mentioned, it has to be genuine, it has to be authentic, and it has to be real, and it can change as much as you want. No one cares. But if you're not talking about it, 90% of the people out there in the job market are going to self-select themselves out of this situation, like I showed you earlier. Tons of stats to back up the same thing. And that's just our experiences too. But I didn't want to just tell you, hey, this is how I feel. This is the reality of the market. Why? Decision-making with the organization is very important. If you have a clarity of your why, you can make decisions quickly. Is this person helping with us, or why? Are they going to further us? The great thing about clarity of the why is the best idea will win. It's the Amazon style, right? It's not about who brought it, it's the best idea will win. If you're clear on your why and everyone's driving to the bus, good to great philosophy, to the same place, no one would care to say, hey, we got to take a left here. Awesome, let's go. This is why your why is so important. And the last thing is partners. You will need partners. You will need people who can grow and build with you. And they need to know your why, because some places will love your why and some places won't. For example, we love Certain's why. We were down with them from the beginning. And when they did seed Series A and Series B, and we did the whole thing with them, it was a beautiful experience because we were aligned with why we were doing this. And we knew the leadership had their back. Next. Okay, that's it. So thanks for joining. For New Ventures BC, long-standing relationship, our commitment to you is anyone who does want to hire properly and really dig their teeth into what the experience is like. Our first hire with you is a discount of 50% off traditional terms of service, because we want you to know what it feels like to hire and build and headhunt and just build this pipeline of talent and never settle when you hire again. And that's my email. So I got some chats here. So I'm going to go through myself. I'll just take control here. First one is new sponsor, cool. Razor, nice to meet you. What are some of the minefields involving in hiring in the US legal and remote work? For example, time management software to keep track of remote workers. Nizar, based on what you're sharing there is a couple of things I would recommend. Number one is, if it's not a permanent position, I would highly recommend to use a company to manage your payroll for you when you're growing. So that's a common way that companies hire contractors, because it would put those team members, for example, if you're going to use Backstretch to do your payrolling. So companies that are in different places in the world will want to use us to do their payrolling, because that means they're employees of Backstretch and we manage the hours, the timesheets, the payrolls, all of the back end work, so the owners can focus on their lives and build their businesses, and they can start and end those contracts as they choose. When you talked about US and legal, let's just talk about the US, for example. There is a lot of different rules down there comparatively, and a lot of them, very interesting enough, revolve around drug testing, which is like, we almost lost a C-level candidate to a really cool company because the day before the person actually was supposed to start, they said, whoa, you didn't do a drug test. And the guy's like, I'm not doing a drug test. He's like, oh, okay. So basically, my answer to Nazar is speak to an expert on this, because that's just the way you got to do it. And that's why you want partners. When you talk about time management software to keep track of remote workers, if you're trying to do it yourself, it's going to be complicated. But if you use somebody who actually does it for a living to get going, you'll have a good experience. So I would say you don't want to have to be trying to sleep at night and thinking about if you followed the legal paperwork in the United States. You don't have to worry about time management software tracking when you're trying to sleep. For a pretty small investment, people will payroll your team members for you. Like for example, at Backstretch, we've aligned with the #1 global payroll provider for a reason. They're a little bit more expensive for us, but they cover all legalities and everything across the world. So anyone can hire contractors through us at any time. Saba, what are some ways to make an applicant's experience positive when sending them a rejection email? So when I first started in recruiting, I had a very different perspective. After doing over 10,000 interviews and managing a whole bunch of positions and now helping others do the same, my feelings is rejection email, straightforward, to the point. Hey, really enjoyed meeting with you, and say something genuine. And then we've decided we're not going to be moving forward here, and we really appreciate your time. Keep it simple, keep it straightforward. The reason why is because you don't want to turn this into an emotional situation. And people who are new to recruiting or HR or internally they think it's valuable to get deeper into it. The challenge with that is if the person's in a negative or emotional space, they're going to be receiving this information through email. And again, we know emails are read through the emotion of your state. No matter how nice it was, it doesn't matter. That will give that person and the candidate a chance to respond more if they choose to as well. And you'll probably see 95% of the people will just say, hey, thanks so much for letting me know. Cool. Very few people will ask for further information or feedback. Probably like 5% from what I've seen. They just appreciate the update. Now, if someone does respond to you for more information, you have a decision to make. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe hop on a call with them. I would recommend never using text or emails because we know that's a really bad state. Are you obliged to? Definitely not. We're all adults, and it's not your job to do that. If you really like the candidate and you connected well, and you really want to spend time with them, that's cool. Do it. But to think that that's something that you should be doing, I see end very badly when people share a whole bunch of feedback, because it usually ends up badly. And remember, then Saba, that person can go on Glassdoor, write a whole bunch of bad reviews because they're upset, and then that's there forever. And we know 41 minutes research candidates, 90% drop off, 2.5 on Glassdoor. It's the domino effect is a big one. It's a really good question because it has changed over 20 years for me. And I find that to be the most clear and simple way of doing it. How does a hiring agency charge? So they're all a little bit different. However, 90% of them work in the same way. And a hiring agency will charge a percentage of salary. And that percentage will be somewhere between 20 to 25% of that one person. So to clarify what that means from a numbers perspective, I'm just giving you round numbers to make it easy. Let's say it's 100K. You're going to owe that agency company $20,000 to $25,000 per person. So it's something that the reason why I left agency world and the reason why I believe that agencies are inherently broken is because they get called upon in times of stress and chaos. They do not get called upon to actually strategically build companies. So as an owner, you'll pay 20 or 25K once, twice, maybe, but there's always going to be a time where you have to stop because of the financial investment you have to make. So if you hire 4 people through that style of company, you're going to be spending $100,000. So, I mean, how the heck did we do 194? So that is how most of them work, probably around 90%. I believe it's an older business model, and I believe it's not, I believe it's broken. So Backstretch was created to solve that. And our business model is we get the price down per team member 50 to 70% less per hire. And we do that through an agreement that works based on the workflow that you need. So whether it's 1 hire in a year or whether it's 100 hires in a year, our job is to create an agreement that's going to work. And it's always going to be between 50 to 70% less than you would ever pay calling an agency, which the purpose is to ensure that you have a strategic partner in all of your hiring and your growth, and you're not only working with them in times of stress and chaos. Our closing ratio internally at Backstretch is 94% of the positions we're given from our customers. Traditional agencies' closing ratio varies between 30 to 35%. So it also is a challenge working with agencies in that space because you're getting a lot of money, but you're only going to get 3 out of the 10 positions you give them closed, and they will work easiest to hardest. Francis, great point. Small mistakes in recruitment can slow a company down massively. Right on, Francis. It sounds like you've been through this before. Nazar, how do you build culture in a remote organization? So, gold, is there one comment? No, I wouldn't say so, Nazar. I say, from what I've seen, it's about being genuine and authentic of what the why of why. Why are you building this? Having regular check-ins with your leadership team about, are we on that path, and sharing it as much as possible so people can select or deselect themselves from working with you or investing into you. Remember that the stats we talked about earlier today, that a lot of the people will drop off in this process, 89%, 90%, 84%, before you hear from them. So the idea of building a culture, and again, culture is one of those buzzwords, but what I'm really trying to show you is, if you know in your heart it's authentic and genuine to you and your leadership team, you're in a really awesome spot. And if you're sharing that and openly sharing that, that's awesome. That's all you can do. People will love it. People may hate it. It doesn't matter. We want the people that don't align with what the whys of what you're doing to deselect themselves out, meaning you should never hear from them. And the ones you do hear from should already kind of get a vibe of what you're building and the why. And they should be the ones to be like, hey, I saw your background. I saw what you're building. This is awesome. That's why I gave the example earlier where we have one customer who 90% of the people who we chat with about what they're doing, they're like, I don't want to do that. And it sounds bad, but actually it's great because the 10% who do know exactly what's going on. They can choose to get behind it and we can proceed with them versus using buzzwords. They're being authentic and genuine to what they're building. And that's that. And I think there's one more. So this new question. How do you convince people with better paying opportunities that they will make progress with you? What kind of language should we use? Great question, Armin. So this is a big topic because you cannot ignore financials. So if you look at each generation, which I've done in terms of the motivations of why they move forward with positions, this is the art and science of recruiting. It's something I love. For all the demographics in the workforce, number one is pay. So it actually is number one for everybody still. Now, number 2 and 3 can change. Through my experiences, it doesn't mean financials are the thing that will make them say yes or no. It's just allowing themselves to know if they want to continue with this process, if it matches. The things that matter after, if financials are a check mark, are what we talked about today. Why, the cultural. But one thing I noticed you didn't put here is the word risk. So many times we're speaking to candidates about startups. They are weighing the risk of why. So if you don't know why it makes sense for a place to take a risk with you, and you're not speaking openly about that, you will lose a lot of candidates for that. And the idea of if they'll make more progress with you, that's you can lay it out as best as possible, but doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be more progress with you than the other opportunities they're chatting with. So I think it's good to be genuine and authentic in terms of where you are and where you sit. So you don't necessarily need to offer the same or more money. You just have to make sure that money makes sense for them. And then diving deep into their why. What are they trying to build? Why are they interested? What are they trying to accomplish? This is in recruiting, we call this the emotional contract. So there's a job description, and then there's this thing called the emotional contract. The emotional contract is what they go home and tell their friends and family what it is. It's really great to learn about that with them. And we dive a lot into that with candidates, especially at the final stages. We talk about, hey, what excites you most about this? What are you afraid of? Let's talk about that now before we get to the offer stage. We talk about things such as how does this compare with you on financials? Let's talk about that. So we got to open up all these things before we get to that end stage. And if the emotional contract aligns up, things are beautiful. But you wonder why a lot of the times people may be declining job offers. It tends to be pushed through. Those things are not dealt with, and then you get rejections. And I think our job as working professionals to help companies grow and hire is to get ahead of that and to showcase how important we can navigate through that to get awesome people aligned early and can keep that going. So we got 11 minutes left, which is good timing for everybody. So thanks everybody for the questions. Those are great questions. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or?
I think we're good. And the last call for questions, but otherwise, yeah, I will say thanks, Matt, for sharing your insights and stats from your experience with certain. And
Yeah, no, awesome.
the
And like
people on your email.
yeah, I know it was a lot of talking, but I just like top level summary, which you probably got from me is it is about being who you are from from the beginning, right? And the quicker you are getting comfortable sharing what you are and the why, it takes care of so many things. And I also will say that my final words are is I know you're at the beginning, but do not settle when you're building your team. So whether you're doing it internally or finding an external partner, just do not settle. This is the number one thing I see startups face is they got introduced to a person, they talk to this person, they don't do a proper search, and then they bring that person on. And it's really tough to grow a startup around people that you don't want to wake up every morning and get excited to talk to and work with. And I think that's one of the big reasons why companies fail at this level is you got to build a team and a bus of amazing people that are going to be an awesome vibe to build with. So there you go.
Yep, agreed. Don't settle. I think that's a good lesson
Don't
in many
settle,
aspects
please.
of life, but hiring
Yeah,
particularly.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, probably the rest of your life too, right? Yeah,
Yes, that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everybody who stuck around for the last Q&A. Have a great day. Clara will send out the recording and the slides over the next day or so.
Thanks,
Otherwise,
Angie. Thanks,
thanks
everybody.
again, Matt.
Okay, no worries. See you later.
Okay, see
Bye.
you next time. Okay, bye everyone.